Congratulations, everyone. You are now watching Falcons Central Radio Show on the Pro Football Central Radio Network. Maybe you're listening to this, but we are coming to you on a special night, Wednesday. We postponed our usual Tuesday broadcast, but we wanted to watch a little bit of LeBron James in the NBA Finals, but not to worry. We got plenty of news surrounding the Atlanta Falcons to talk about tonight. We're going to be talking a little bit about minicamp. We'll be talking some about some of their roster moves that they made in the last week or so since we did them. We'll be doing our usual positional breakdowns. This week we'll be talking about the wide receivers and tight end positions. And as usual, we'll be getting to your mailbag questions at the end of the show. I should introduce myself. My name is Aaron Freeman. I am the founder of FalcFans.com, and my co-host is Scott Karasik, who covers the Falcons for Bleacher Report. So everyone, welcome back to the show. So Scott, let's jump right into this thing. We'll kick this thing off by let's talk about the two moves that, the question is, what took them so long to make these two moves? The first of which is signing Vic Beasley, and the second is cutting Sam Baker. So I'll leave it up to you, Scott, which one you want to talk about first.
What took so long for Vic Beasley? What are you talking about?
Just say, people ask why didn't he sign when everybody else signed?
Because normally top 10 picks don't sign until the middle of June.
Well,
I kept saying if it's July 1st or July 15th, really, once we hit July 15th, start freaking out about Vic Beasley not being signed. Other than that, you really have nothing to worry about. He's going to sign. He's going to sign for his slot. I mean, it is what it is. I'm not worried about that at all.
Okay. All right. So what about Sam Baker? What took so long with that move?
You can't cut a guy unless he's healthy. He has to pass a physical for them to cut him. So you have to rehab a guy, make sure he's maybe not perfectly healthy, but healthy enough to where he's not using crutches to walk kind of thing. And, he's at least physically able to run. So Sam Baker passed his physical, and then the minute he passed his physical, he got cut.
Yeah. Don't quote me on this, but I believe the way it works is during training camp and during the regular season, you can cut guys with an injury settlement where basically you say, well, you're hurt and we'll pay you this amount of money. I don't know the exact terms of it, but basically you have to pay the guy a certain percentage of his contract, his salary, his base salary. But you can't really do that in the offseason. Otherwise, the Falcons probably would have cut Sam Baker a while ago. It's similar to what they did with Ovi Mahaley a couple of years ago when he was coming off of his knee injury. Back in the offseason of 2012, they basically waited until he got clear. I think he got cleared to practice on a Friday, and they cut him on a Monday. So that's basically how it worked with Sam Baker, pretty much. So that's why it took so long.
Exactly.
All right. Speaking of offensive line, I think most Falcon fans were kind of like good riddance when Sam Baker got cut, but a little bit of a downer, even though he's not currently a Falcon. But Justin Blaylock announced his retirement. We can now look back and say Justin Blaylock played his entire career with the Atlanta Falcons. I guess that's a positive. How do we put a period, a footnote, summarize his career as a Falcon? What do we think of Justin Blaylock when all is said and done?
I would buy his jersey. He's an integral part of that 2008 to 2012 run, which was not even arguably, that was the best 5 years of Atlanta Falcons history thus far.
Definitely.
And he was a huge part of it, and he was a big reason why the Falcons were even able to protect Matt Ryan during those years. So the easiest way to summarize his career is thank you. Thank you for protecting Ryan's butt. Thank you for being a consummate Falcon. Thank you for being a great example for the younger players your entire career. Thank you for never getting arrested. Thank you for never doing anything crazy that could hurt the team, you know. He was an above average left guard his entire career.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember when he got that big contract back in 2011, and I remember being initially upset over it because I thought he got overpaid. But over the years, it was I basically learned to start to appreciate Justin Blaylock every season. Just his consistency, just the fact that he gave you, he wasn't the world's greatest guard, but he was a solid player. He did his job, and he did that every week, every snap. He played, I think that he had 100 consecutive games where he didn't miss a single snap. He started 100 consecutive games where he didn't miss a single snap. So that sort of tells you his level of consistency that he had in Atlanta, and it's one of those things that you're probably not going to see that again for a pretty long time. So, I salute Justin Blaylock for his performance over the years. A couple of years ago I was complaining about it, but I've matured since then, and I've learned to appreciate what he gave to Atlanta. And I was initially upset when the Falcons cut him this offseason because I had, over the last 4 or so years, had really learned to appreciate what he brought to the table. I'm going to miss him. Definitely miss him as a Falcon.
I think the best way to compare him would be the Marietta Diner.
Okay.
If you've ever been in Atlanta, you've ever been in the Marietta Diner, you're always going to have a good experience. It's always going to be good food. It's always going to be good. There's nothing great about the place, but it's always going to be the same consistent quality. It's always going to be good and worth going to every single time. Justin Blaylock was the equivalent of that at left guard.
Okay.
So old, reliable.
Yeah, old, reliable. So let's talk a little bit about, we heard that the Falcons put in a waiver claim on ex-Buccaneers, ex-Patriots tight end / wide receiver. I don't know exactly. He's a move tight end, a joker type of dude.
Yep.
Tim Wright. So I guess my question is, I remember when we just talked about this a little bit when we put in a waiver claim on DJ Swearinger, the former Texan safety. And we talked about, was this the Falcons just saying, oh, there's a young, talented player out there that could, add depth and health in our team. Why not put a waiver claim in him? Or does this mean, are the Falcons still searching for a potential starting tight end? So I leave it up to you to answer that, Scott.
I mean, they might still be potentially searching for another tight end, but as of right now, I think it's pretty easy to say that Tim Wright would have been better than Mickey Schuler or Levine Toilolo for way cheaper.
Yeah. Can't disagree with that.
And I think it's just trying to get better overall as a team. Best way to do that is bring in as much talent as possible. DJ Swearinger may not have been the best possible fit for Dan Quinn's defense, but hell, he's a better player than Kamal Ishmael or Charles Godfrey is.
Okay. All right. I don't disagree. I think Tim Wright is a good, solid, athletic player. I thought he would have been a lot more successful in New England than he turned out to be. I remember him, 2 years ago, carving up the middle of the Falcons' defense, a couple of games. So it's one of those things where, why not? If he can continue to grow and sort of become the player that people think he's capable of being, then that would have been a great pickup for the Falcons. Obviously, he'll be back in Tampa Bay this year. Other than Greg Olsen, you can make the claim he's now immediately the second best tight end in the NFC South.
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, I'm just saying, you can make the argument. I'd probably put Safari G. Okay. All right. Well, just wanted to get your thoughts on that. Let's talk a little bit about minicamp. Neither of us were at minicamp unless, Scott, you managed to play hooky from work today that you didn't tell me about. So we can't really give you firsthand account, but we'll talk a little bit about some of the stuff that other people who were at camp, like Vaughn McClure and Gina Thomas and Knox Bardine and D-Led, were saying out of training camp. So obviously there was big news today with the injury to offensive tackle Lamar Holmes. He broke his foot. This is an injury he's had multiple times. It was a foot injury that knocked him out last season. It was a foot injury that pretty much tanked his rookie season. You know, the issue with Holmes was he had lost, what, like 20, 30 pounds?
25 pounds, yeah.
Taking that next step to be like, okay, maybe now that we've changed schemes, maybe now new coaching staff, maybe now that Holmes is now doesn't have the sort of leash that he had the first couple of years, we're going to see him take that next step as an offensive tackle, and then he has this setback. So is this a huge setback for the Falcons, or is this something that they already have the players already on the roster that they can overcome this?
I mean, he wasn't starting. You were starting Matthews and Schrader at tackle, but he was competing for that that swing tackle role, and for whatever reason, he was unable to stay healthy again. I mean, I don't know what it is with his foot. Maybe they gotta like take the bones out and put some adamantium in there or something. But just, God, you feel for the guy.
Yeah.
He just continually gets hurt, and there's no reason that. I just don't understand how he always gets hurt all the time.
Well, you know, they say some people just don't have the, you know, I guess the bone structure to be 300 pounds. I guess, I don't know. Mike Johnson was the same way. He always got hurt.
Yeah, like, and maybe that's what it is. Maybe he just needs to not be in the league, and he'll be a better player or a better fit for his body. He's always hurt. It's always a foot injury. So
yeah. Been my experience that when you're a big guy and you have a lot of lower leg injuries, I'm thinking of guys like Parade Jerry, Byron Leftwich. It's usually an indicator that you may not be in the world's greatest shape, but it seemed like Holmes was in great shape this year. So it wasn't like, I guess, you know, the other times maybe that was the reason, and maybe this time it was just a freak injury. You know, I'll be curious to see what the prognosis on if he's out for the season or if he's going to be out through training camp. Is he going to be a PUP guy, or is he going to be a guy that goes on the injured reserve? But obviously, do you think this means that Tyler Columbus is now the front runner to be the swing tackle?
I don't want him to be, because I don't think he's that good. I really hope Jake Rogers wins the job. I think he's a better football player than Tyler Columbus is.
Do you think
Mike Person could even do it?
That's true. Didn't even think about that. You think the Falcons need to go out and get somebody?
Yeah, they need to go out and get Evan Mathis. That's what they need to do.
But
go out and get Evan Mathis, move Person to tackle, and then boom, you're done.
okay.
Or hell, even try Peter Kahn's at tackle, because Kahn's can't play inside. He's not strong enough.
That's clear. That's true. I can't disagree with that point. Okay. Well, Mike Person is your swing tackle. That's still not that much better than Tyler Columbus.
I mean, no matter what you do, swing tackle is not a position that you really you can't focus on having a great swing tackle just in case one of your guys gets injured. I mean, what can you do? You can go sign Will Svitek maybe? Like, what's really out there?
Jake Long, Anthony Collins are probably the two best. But Jake Long is also
yeah. Go sign Anthony Collins then. Go sign Jake Long. I'd be down with that every day. Cut Tyler Columbus, but sign Jake Long or Anthony Collins. Go for it. I'm completely down for that. And then still go out and get Evan Mathis.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not gonna be against getting Evan Mathis. It doesn't really help your tackle situation. It's just really kind of a guard situation. But let's switch to the other side of the ball. Let's talk a little bit about the secondary. Ricardo Allen has been getting a lot of first team reps at free safety. What are we reading into that?
That Charles Godfrey sucks, like I said he did. And Ricardo Allen has the intelligence, the speed, the playmaking ability to be a good free safety in the scheme. And he's kind of bulked up a bit and gotten better at tackling. So I'm liking the move. Hell, if Ricardo Allen ends up being a great 5th round pick because he's the starting free safety after being cut because Mike Smith had no idea how to use him, I think that would be the perfect case of Mike Smith had no idea what the hell he was doing, and Dan Quinn's the reason why this team's going to be good.
Okay. Well, I do remember saying last year when we drafted Allen, I thought he would have made a better safety prospect than Desmond Southward if he was a little bit taller and a little bit heavier. Thought he was a much more instinctual player. It's nice to see that he's getting first team reps. It's nice to see that it seems like his transition to safety is going smoothly. I don't think he's going to be the starter. I do think that's maybe I'm wrong, but it seems like when you have a late round pick who's played 0 snaps, who's making a transition to a new position in a new defensive scheme, who, that just at a critical position in the defense, it just does not seem like a recipe for success for him to be the starter. But what this does seem to tell me that the possibility that by, week 1, is he ready to be the starter? I put that in question. We'll see how it plays out. But, maybe that transition will happen sooner rather than later. And maybe, November, December, he might be ready to take that job from Godfrey. And certainly maybe 2016, we may not have to use a high pick on a safety because Allen's waiting in the wings. But I don't know. It seems like, it's mini camps. I'm not going to read too much into it. It's nice to see that he's playing well, but I'm not going to suddenly think, oh, he's now the front runner to be the starting safety.
I'm not going to say he's the absolute front runner, but I wouldn't be shocked if he winds up winning the job by the time training camp ends.
I would like to see it, but I just, experience tells me that when you have all those things working against you like Ricardo Allen does, the odds are not high, especially when you're going against a guy who has, 8 years or 7 years or whatever the number is of starting experience, does fit the scheme. But, obviously we're not going to agree on Godfrey, but we'll see how it plays out.
But Godfrey sucks. That's the whole point. Godfrey's terrible.
Okay. I think you'll be singing a different tune by September, but we'll see.
I don't. I think you'll be the one going, oh, man, I was wrong about Ricardo Allen. He's got 2 interceptions in the first 3 games. All right.
Well, I don't think I've always liked Ricardo Allen as a safety. But I just don't think – it's just like that's a critical position.
You can play safety. It's not a completely different position. He played a lot of slot in college. He's really a good fit inside as a safety. It's not that his role this year is going to be too different than the cover 3 role he played in college. He's just going to be starting from deeper than where he was at.
Well, no, it's
on the edge.
It's not that he can't play the position. It's the fact that he has to basically go from a guy. This is practically his rookie season, and now he's going to be suddenly quarterbacking the defense.
I don't think that is quarterbacking the defense.
That's what he's going to be doing. That's what the free safety in this scheme does. He's going to quarterback the defense.
I don't think. Well, you don't have to have the free safety quarterback the entire defense. They could have William Moore make the calls early on until Allen's comfortable with it. But it's not like he's a stupid guy. He got into Purdue on an academic scholarship, not an athletic scholarship. He's a really smart dude.
I'm not saying that he can't do it. I'm saying I don't believe that he's in a position where the odds are in his favor to do it this year, especially week one. Like next year, no problem with Ricardo Allen being a potential starter. But this year, he's got a lot of things working against him that I think ultimately Dan Quinn's going to want somebody who's experienced back there. And I think that's why Godfrey's going to ultimately win the job. Even if he's only mediocre, I think he's going to go with someone he can trust more so than Ricardo Allen, who's basically completely green. You know?
And that's fair, but I still think that Ricardo Allen ends up winning the job because they're all going in there as basically, how do I put this? There's no bias at all between any of these players and the coaches. They're going in completely fresh slates. You know, obviously Matt Ryan, Julio Jones, the obvious top 10 in the league players at their positions are guaranteed starting spots. But we might see a defensive line where Malachi Goodman and Rashid Hageman and Paul Soliai and Vic Beasley are your 4 starters.
Yeah.
You know, we might see a defense where, well, you know, Brooks Reed and Justin Durant are the starters, but Marcus Sproul might win middle linebacker. You have no idea what's going to happen when all's said and done.
I agree.
Because brand new coaching staff, brand new thoughts. You know, maybe William Moore ends up getting cut at some point during the season or before the season.
I wouldn't bet on that one.
I wouldn't bet on it either. I'm just saying it's very possible. Based on his contract, he is a leader, but it is a possibility that William Moore will get cut before the season. Not that he should, but it's possible. We don't know exactly what's going to.
Okay.
Let's put it this way. No one thought it was going to happen that Sam Baker was going to get cut either. And I kept saying it's a new coaching staff. It's not just possible. It's probably going to happen.
I think I know I've been thinking Sam Baker was going to get cut since August. So the fact that he didn't get cut until this point was the shock more so than that he got cut. I think that writing's been on the wall since last season. I would say William Moore's chances of getting cut is probably higher than it was under Mike Smith, but I would say that it went from like 0% to 0.2%. I think there's no chance they're going to cut William Moore. But we'll see what happens. I'm looking for. I hope Allen, to put a button on the issue, I hope Allen makes it a real competition, and I hope by the end we're like, I don't know who's going to win the starting job because they're neck and neck. But I think ultimately, if it's not Charles Godfrey, then they're going to go out and get somebody else to be the safety. I don't think they're going to throw Ricardo Allen to the Wolves this year as the starting free safety.
I think they would.
Okay. All right. Let's our main topic tonight, though, is wide receivers. So let's talk a little bit about some of the stuff we've heard about wide receivers at minicamp. We've heard some people say that Leonard Hankerson and Justin Hardy have been impressive. Matt Ryan singled out Justin Hardy as a guy that's looked good. Roddy White has sat out these 2 days of minicamps. He's supposed to practice tomorrow because they're trying to avoid flare-ups in his knee. That's not a promising sign because that's apparently the same knee that was bothering him last offseason. And Devin Hester missed the practice on Monday because he had to attend to a death in his family. Hopefully, send our condolences out to him for that. But hopefully he gets back in the fold and picks up where he left off prior to that. But how do you think what we've heard about these wide receivers at minicamp, do you think this is really affecting sort of how the shuffle in terms of the depth chart goes, or is this just, typical June minicamp? Wide receivers look good because,
it's 7-on-7s.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
7-on-7s. Wide receivers always look great in 7-on-7s.
Okay. So I guess my next question before we jump fully into the wide receiver discussion, any concern 1 to 10 on Roddy's knee being something that's holding him out?
I mean, I'm not expecting Roddy to have as big of an impact this year as people are giving him credit for. Like, I think he'll be a 70 catch kind of guy, but I think he just got an old man day.
Okay. Is this something that we're going to have to pay attention to as the season goes on, where it's like, oh, Roddy's only going to be practicing 1 day a week, certain weeks, because of this knee? You think that's going to be a situation?
Probably, but I think it's going to be like Roddy because of his knee. I think it's going to be because Roddy is 33 years old, 34 years old. Hey, you can take off today. It's Wednesday.
Okay. Yeah, I think he probably would get that Wednesday off just because of his age. I guess my issue is he going to get that Thursday off because of his knee? So that's the one thing I'd be looking out for. But we'll see how that goes. Obviously, we'll have to see what happens in September. So no need to get all bent out of shape in June yet. So. All right, Scott, let's jump into this wide receiver tight end breakdown. I think it's pretty clear who are going to be the starters in Atlanta at wide receiver, Roddy White and Julio Jones. I guess the big discussion at the wide receiver position is going to be how does the rest of the depth chart shack up? Who's going to be the third? Who's going to be the fourth guy? Who's going to be the fifth guy? Is there going to be a sixth guy? Devin Hester, Leonard Hankerson, Justin Hardy, Eric Weems are probably the front runners for at least 2, if not 3 of those spots. We also have Nick Williams, Bernard Reedy, Freddie Martino, Marquez Clark, who looks identical to Odell Beckham Jr., and Shane Wynn.
It's a shame he doesn't play identical to Odell Beckham Jr.
It is a shame, right?
Especially for the investment. Yeah, Roddy and Julio definitely starting. I think Hester and Hardy compete for that slot role. And I do think Hardy ends up winning it by the time the season ends, but not by the beginning of the season. Hankerson, he's that typical fourth, fifth wide receiver who's going to come in, play special teams, and be an option if they run that many receivers on a play. Eric Weems, he's going to make the team. He's special Weems. There's not any way he's not making the team. He's like the one guy that Keith Armstrong gets to pick every year and will never not pick to be on his team. Nick Williams, camp fodder. Shane Wynn, Freddie Martino, Bernard Reedy, Marquez Clark. I think those 4 guys are competing for 2 practice squad spots, really.
Okay. Now, I guess my next question is, Hankerson didn't play a ton of special teams at Washington. Do you think that hurts his chances, especially if a guy like Hardy leapfrogs him on the depth chart, or is he pretty safe for a job just because of what he can do on offense?
He can play special teams. He did it at Miami. I just don't think that he played a lot of special teams in Washington because they like using cornerbacks as gunners and safeties as gunners because those are positions that really know how to tackle. But I don't see an issue with him playing a gunner role. I think he'll end up being he won't be a core 4 guy the way Desmond Southward or Eric Weems or one of those guys are, but he'll still be an asset on special teams.
Okay. My next question is, what sort of role do you see? Do you see Devin Hester taking a step back in terms of how he's used on offense? And or do you basically, is he going to be used like he was that last year in Chicago, where basically just return kicks and we might throw you out on offense occasionally, but now that we have Hardy and now we have Hankerson, we don't really need you on offense anymore?
I don't think Hankerson's good enough to keep Hester off the field, if that's what you're asking. Hester's a way better option than Hankerson is. especially coming out of the slot. And I can see Shanahan designing a whole package around just having Hester on the field, getting the ball in his hand, making sure he's a weapon. Maybe he only sees the ball 50 times all year coming his way. And maybe he only catches 35 of those balls. But get the ball in his hand and get him a shot, and then hopefully he produces better than he did last year.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I can't disagree with anything you said. Julio is going to be Julio. I'm hoping Roddy is better than what he was last year. I don't think he can get much worse than what he was last year, but I'm not expecting a huge year from him. But if he's able to play all 16 games, then he'll probably be productive. And I'm looking forward to see what Hardy does, whether or not he starts the year as a number 3. But if he doesn't, then I'm pretty confident that by year's end he'll definitely be that number 3 guy. So it's really about what, I guess, if until that day that Hardy is that number 3, Hankerson or Hester, whoever the guy is, what they sort of contribute to sort of keep the offense afloat. But I like our wide receiver core. Obviously Julio makes or breaks it. If he gets hurt again, God forbid, it's not a great group, but it's better than what it was last year. So I'll take that. So
Justin Hardy has the potential to look more like an early Roddy White than what Harry Douglas was ever going to look like.
Yeah, I would go with that. Definitely.
And hopefully he plays to that potential, because if he does, then Roddy White can play more in the slot and be a lot better off. I'm more worried about tight end right now than I am about wide receiver. But I think Matt Ryan's the kind of guy who can make yardage, can create yardage, whether Julio's healthy or not, honestly.
I agree. So let's talk about the tight ends. Obviously, it's probably safe to say it's a fairly open competition relative to a lot of other spots. Certainly relative to the wide receiver spot in terms of that starting spot. We have Levine Toilolo, Jacob Tamme, Tony Moyaki, Mickey Schuler, and Bo Gardner as the tight ends on the roster. So obviously, who's going to be the starter when the season starts?
The more I keep hearing stuff out of training camp, it's going to be Tamme. He's the only one seeing first team reps. I mean, they brought him in to start. And then Moyaki's the number 2 guy. And then the only way Toilolo makes the team is if he shows special teams and red zone abilities. There's a very real shot that Toilolo could get cut for Mickey Schuler.
Okay. Well, I'm glad that you finally came around on Tamme. I've been.
I still think Tamme sucks. I just don't think that he's gonna be a backup.
Okay.
Like I don't think he's a good starter. He's just going to be the starter.
Okay. Well, I think you're gonna be wrong about that. I think Tammy's gonna be a big part of the third down offense. I think Matt Ryan really missed that weapon. That option, I should say, maybe not weapon. Weapon's a strong word, but that option in the middle of the field on those short and intermediate routes that Tony Gonzalez was for many years. Obviously, Tammy's not going to be to the level of Tony Gonzalez, but I think he'll give him, 5,000% more of that option than what Toilolo was last year. So I think we'll see a massive improvement from the tight end position. It won't be like what it was under Tony, obviously, but I think Tammy's going to be a good player. He's going to be a productive player. I think he'll wind up being our third most productive guy, and I wouldn't be surprised if his production isn't that far off from what Roddy's is this year. So,
I mean, yeah. he might have that good of production, but I'm not buying into Tammy. He's got to actually prove it to me for me to
Okay. Well,
buy in.
that's what the preseason's for. So you talked about Toilolo getting cut. Is Schuler going to be the guy? Gardner's a pretty good athlete. I thought if I recall correctly, he had a pretty good spark score. But is it basically Schuler or
Gardner's trying to get a practice squad spot because he's just it's rough. He is rough. His film is awful. Great athlete, horrible football player.
Okay. All right. Well,
horrible football player. Like, no idea how to run her out. Mediocre at catching the ball, but great athlete. Bad blocker. Great athlete. Like, anything related to football, he's bad at. Anything related to running in a straight line, he's great at.
All right. Well, is he a great athlete, Scott?
For his size, great athlete.
Okay.
But
right.
just
okay. All right. So, is there a chance that we're gonna be seeing just 2 tight ends on the roster, or is it pretty much?
There's gonna be 3. The question is whether it's Toilolo or Schuler. Schuler's a great athlete too. He just needed to learn how to play football.
Yeah, I might be eating these words in a couple of months, but Schuler's just he doesn't do anything. Like he's been on like 8 teams in like 5 years. He's a camp body to me. He's a guy. He does his job. He's good enough to stick in the NFL, but he can't stick in the NFL. So it's just one of those things where I don't expect that to change this year. So I think it's going to be Toilolo again as that third guy. But I do agree with you. There's probably there's a higher probability that he gets cut this year than it was last year. So he's on the bubble.
Yeah, definitely on the bubble. Now, that being said, I think it's pretty much guaranteed a first or a second round pick in 2016 is going to be taking a tight end.
Okay, I'm. You're probably I won't bet against you on that, but I kind of think, or maybe I'm hoping that Tammy's going to be so good that maybe it's a 3rd or 4th round pick, but we'll see. Okay, Scott, you got any more thoughts on wide receivers and tight ends, or do you want to jump into the mailbag?
Let's get in the mailbag.
Yeah, we got plenty. All right, Jordan and AV White asks, is it 100% likely or 110% likely that Weatherspoon plays at a Pro Bowl level in Arizona for the next 6 years?
I'm going to go with it's like 50% likely. Either he's injured and doesn't play, or he's healthy and he plays at a Pro Bowl level. I'm going to go more likely to be injured and not play at a Pro Bowl level.
Well, it seems like Jordan's a big fan of Spoon. So, I guess he's got memories of John Abraham. I think Spoon's going to do well in Arizona. Obviously, it's going to be tied to his health. But I think he's a good fit for that scheme, and he'll play well if he's healthy. So next 6 years, probably not, because, you can't count on Spoon to be healthy for 6 years. But when he's healthy, I think he'll be at a Pro Bowl level. All right. Martin Gisborne at UK Dirty Bird asked, the last 2 years I got excited, then disappointed. Safe to get excited this year?
Yes, because Mike Smith is not coaching this team.
Okay. Yeah, I think Martin, I can't tell you, to expect the Super Bowl, but I do think you'll at least be able to get excited that the team that you will watch on Sundays is going to be a lot more competitive and a lot more enjoyable to watch, similar to the teams that Mike Smith coached early on in his time here in Atlanta. So I think it's safe to get excited. All right. Dustin asks about Hankerson and Ricardo Allen being as good as advertised during minicamp. We can't really answer that because we weren't there. But Mr. Mac Daddy Sr. asks, do you think Ricardo Allen has the potential to be a good free safety in the scheme? I think we already answered that, but I guess Scott put a button on that. What are your thoughts on Allen being a good free safety?
I think Allen could be the starter in the scheme, and I think he could end up being a 5-6 interception kind of guy. Only getting beat maybe once or twice all year, deep kind of thing. And I don't think he'll get beat 40-plus yards the way Ishmael did, because he's a faster overall player. He's a lot faster than Ishmael.
I like Ricardo Allen, but I do think if we're talking about his potential in this scheme, I think he's more Jerron Johnson than Earl Thomas. A guy that can be more of a functional starter, not somebody who you're going to sit there and be like, oh, man, our secondary is looking great with Ricardo Allen back there. Nothing against Ricardo Allen, but I just think, I think he fits the scheme well. I just don't think he has the sort of upside to be, quote unquote, good. Someone who you're going to sit there and say, plug him in at free safety and not have to worry about free safety for, 3 or 4 years. But we'll see what happens. All right. Anwar Poet asks a similar question about Ricardo Allen. So does JD Beast. So we'll skip those. And Weisengrund asks, what's your surprise of the mini camp so far? Columbus ahead of Holmes, Mincy being first nickel, or something else? You surprised by anything, Scott?
It's mini camp.
Okay. There you go. I can't say it better than that. So yeah. It's one of those things where, we'll see what happens, when the training camp starts. That's when the real stuff happens. Now they can be, they can throw a guy out there and see what's going on. So,
it's
Jason Stamey asks, who will be the starting slot corner for the Falcons this year?
Robert Alford, with Jalen Collins coming in to play outside corner when Alford comes in, or when Alford moves in.
Yeah, I've said it before, but I think that probably what it'll be week 1. I think probably by the time we get to week 16, it'll be Trufant that slides inside, but we'll see how it plays out. If Alford plays well, then Trufant won't have to make the move. But personally, I think Alford's a better outside corner than inside, so that's why I think that move will happen.
Jalen Collins also is a pretty solid inside corner, so that could be
He can do it too. But I think Trufant's the best slot guy we have on the roster right now. All right. Mr. Logic at Cedric Email asks, I need to know about zone blocking and who takes Blaylock's place.
Zone blocking is a team version of blocking. Everyone on the entire offensive line, say the play is going to the right, their first step is to the right and then up. So boom, boom. Hey, let's all move together, and then there's no specific man that you hit, so it doesn't really matter if the opposing team's in a 3-4 or 4-3 before the play is called. You work together, you hit the front, the backside guys do the cut blocking. Just in case that the guy needs to cut back, you can neutralize those players in the back end. I mean, it's as simple as that. It puts the onus on the running back to find the hole, cut through the hole, take one cut, and move upfield. Tevin Coleman, Devontae Freeman, they're both going to be way better in this scheme than they would have been in Mike Tice's scheme. And I think it's a good fit for Atlanta, and I think it's a good fit for the athleticism on the offensive line. As for who takes Blaylock's place, hopefully they go out and sign Evan Mathis. Assuming that they don't sign Evan Mathis, I think it's going to be Chris Chester.
Okay. Yeah, I can't, ditto. All right. Dustin at Dirty Birds asks, now that Sam Baker is gone, does Atlanta look towards Evan Mathis?
They should.
Yeah, I mean, he's one of the best guards in the NFL. He's arguably the best guard in the NFL. Even if you assume that at his age, he's going to be 34 this year, he's coming off an injury. He takes half a step back, he'll still be a top 3, top 5 guard. So if you have an opportunity to get that sort of player, then why not? He's a perfect fit for the scheme. He's a major upgrade. And now with the injury to Lamar Holmes, now you're worried a little bit about your depth. And if you can sign Evan Mathis and make Chester your swing guard / center, as opposed to Mike Person or Peter Kahns or James Stone being that guy, that's a major upgrade. So, sure. All right. Jonathan Rod asked the same basic question. Speaking of the offensive line, Mr. Mac Daddy Sr. asks, a Bleacher Report article had the Falcons O-line rated as at number 30 in the league. What are your thoughts?
I mean, looking on paper, and if you don't know anything about the players or the scheme or just knowing the guy who wrote it, he's not exactly an offensive line expert. So he's just going based off of a lot of other people's opinions on that one. I mean, I'm not putting much credibility in the article. I think the line's a lot better than people are giving it credit for. I think it's going to prove to be a lot better, especially once Jake Matthews gets healthy. A healthy Jake Matthews, Chris Chester, Joe Hawley, John Asamoah, Ryan Schrader offensive line could be a top 10 offensive lineman in the league.
Yeah, I think there's a perception that Jake Matthews isn't very good, and I think that's a false perception. I think there's a perception that Joe Hawley isn't very good. I think that's a false perception. There's a perception out there that John Asamoah is a bad fit in this new blocking scheme, which is a false perception. I think most people, unless you watch the Falcons, don't know who Ryan Schrader is, and so they assume he's not very good. And so I think I think the Falcons starting 5 is a good starting 5. The concern, if you have any concern about the Falcons offensive line, is their depth. And if Holmes is going to be out for a period of time, and if the Falcons' best guard is Mike Person as a backup, then you're concerned about their offensive line. But if their 5 guys are relatively healthy this year, and you only have to worry about maybe a quarter missed here or a game missed there, I think their offensive line is going to be very good. So I think by year's end, I'm not going to say they have a top 5 offensive line, but I think people are going to be talking about this offensive line as top 20, top 15 possibly, if everybody's healthy. So that's my thoughts. Speaking of ranking position groups, Derek Hunter at D-Rock the Party, where would you rank Atlanta's wide receiver core as far as their run in screen blocking compared to the rest of the NFL? Now, Derek, I don't know how the Falcons run in screen blocking compared to the rest of the NFL. That is not something that I'm very aware of, how the Jaguars or the Dolphins compare with their screen blocking. But, Julio's a good blocker. Harry Douglas was terrible at blocking, so he's gone. So by default, they're better. So there you go.
Wide receivers aren't made to block. They're made to catch passes. Worrying about a wide receiver's running ability is like worrying about a kicker's throwing ability.
There you go. All right. JD Beast asks, if Roddy's healthy this year, where does he rank among the game's wide receivers? Which vets are most likely to be surprise cuts?
If he's healthy this year, he's probably 35th or so out of all receivers in the league. And vets who could be surprise cuts. I know Aaron would be surprised by it, but I wouldn't be. Tyson Jackson. Aaron would be heartbroken by it, but I could see it happening. Jonathan Babineau.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, you'd be heartbroken. It's true.
Yeah.
Aaron would also be heartbroken. Nathan Stupar.
Yeah, that would hurt me.
Let's see. William Moore's a potential cut just based on his contract. Let's see. Could see Devin Hester cut if he gets injured at a certain point and they don't think that he can come back and be the same kind of guy. But really, this roster is super young. There's not a lot of veterans that you're going to cut and get ridiculous money out of. The guys that make the most sense to cut have already all been cut except for Tyson Jackson.
Yeah, I can't name anybody other than what Scott said that I would say would be a surprise. Like Croy Bierman, would that count as a surprise cut? I don't think so. But as far as where Roddy ranks, I probably would agree with Scott. It's probably somewhere in the 30s if you're talking about pure ability. Probably in terms of production, he'll probably be like top 15 in terms of like catches and yards. But I think in terms of what his actual impact is, he's probably barely at this point in the top 32 receivers in the NFL. Probably somewhere between like 28 and 35, somewhere around there. Even if he's healthy, I just don't think Roddy has that sort of ability that other younger, faster, more explosive wide receivers have that can sort of dictate coverages. I think Roddy's a guy that needs a guy like Julio playing across from him who's going to open up things for him, and then he can do his damage one-on-one against lesser corners. But, if he's facing a guy like Richard Sherman today, he's going to get shut out. If he's facing a top-tier corner like that, he's not going to do anything against him. That wasn't the case a couple of years ago, but I think that's the case now, even if he's healthy. All right. Smorgasborg9 asks, what was the best/worst move the Falcons made this offseason? Are there any players out there yet we should sign ASAP?
The best move they made was Vic Beasley in the first round. And there's no way that you can convince me otherwise. The worst move that they made was not cutting Tyson Jackson. At least not yet. And there's no way that you can convince me otherwise. Tyson Jackson is a waste of space. Vic Beasley is exactly what the Falcons haven't had for the past 2.5 years. Once John Abraham got hurt in the 2012 season with his ankle. So there you go.
I gotta agree with that's best move. As far as his worst move, I guess I'd say Phillip Adams, or not necessarily signing Phillip Adams, but just kind of how the Falcons just kind of were laissez-faire with the cornerback depth, which kind of forced them to take Jalen Collins in the second round because it was a big need. Nothing against Jalen Collins or anything like that, but it's just kind of one of those things where if they had been a little bit more aggressive in free agency, trying to get a better option than Phillip Adams as their nickel cornerback, they may have been able to take another position at that spot in round 2. Maybe got as equal a better player at another position. But, that's not really saying that's not a bad move. But I guess if I'm saying their worst move, that was probably it. Obviously, players that are out there that we should sign, I'm in favor of Jake Long. He's got to get healthy. But Evan Mathis is another guy. I'm still on the Dwight Freeney bandwagon. I think he'd do wonders to help Vic Beasley, perfect that spin move. just for that, I think, and certainly I think he'll be a better nickel specialist than Corey Bierman would be. But those would be the three guys that I would look at signing. All right, this last question is directed at me. At Jalen Muhammad asked, did Aaron try the chicken wings I recommended, and how do they taste compared to Julio Jones? Well, I did try them, Jalen. Basically, I made lemon pepper wings the other night, and he told me to put Italian dressing and hot sauce on them, and I tried that. Compared to Julio, they pale in comparison because everything pales in comparison to Julio Jones, even the best chicken wings in the world, and that's coming from me. But they were pretty good. I don't know if they really made lemon pepper wings better, but it made them different. So there you go.
Lemon pepper wings are best with lemon and pepper. That's it. That's it.
They were good, and it just I don't think it enhanced the flavor. It didn't take it away, but it just didn't enhance the flavor. But interesting. All right, folks. That is our show. Always got to close out with a chicken wing question. All right. You can hit me up on Twitter. I'm at FalcFan. Scott is at Scott Karasik. Please follow the show at Falcons PFC to get updates. Follow PF Central to get updates on when it's on iTunes. You can always use the hashtag Falcons mailbag to send us our questions each week. That way it's easier for us to find them. We appreciate anybody that stuck with us tonight on our odd night. We should be back next Tuesday to talk about the offensive line and probably a lot more about why the Falcons should sign Evan Mathis next week. So that'll be something to look forward to.